I might not be this person in 5 years, and I might be someone else. And I have to be okay with that growth. And it's just the beginner's mind, and saying, I'm going to walk in this with the beginner's mind with no attachments and no fear, and just let it do what it does.
Not every battle has a success story, but every success story has a battle. Hi, I'm Tia Minzoni, CEO and co-owner of luxury private jet company Stella Jets, a serial entrepreneur, a survivor, and your host of the Fight to Fly show. On Fight to Fly, I sit down with the world's highest achievers who share their incredible stories and lessons they've learned on their own fight to fly. Expect to be inspired, entertained, and motivated to break down the barriers between you and your high-achieving success story. Come back each week for a new episode and be ready to empower yourself to give your dreams wings. Welcome to the Fight to Fly show. Welcome to today's Fight to Fly show. I'm so excited today to have Veronica Hazley with us. Veronica is, she's a CEO, she's an author, she's the founder of the Hey Chica movement. Her hashtag is the No Mean Girl movement, which I absolutely love. Never been a mean girl, so, that time is over. And she's on the board of several organizations for advocacy. Her and I met at a Women of Influence event in Dallas where she was on the board speaking, and her story just spoke volumes to me. And so, of course, I had to invite her here today. Veronica, welcome to the Fight to Fly show.
Thank you. Just hearing our story and how we're connected and the alignment is just like, wow, I'm so glad we're connected to have a conversation, because you are amazing as well.
Thank you. I think, energy attracts energy. So anytime I see that someone is attracted to my circle that I absolutely love and admire, it makes me feel good about myself too, right?
Absolutely.
So our relationship capital and our energy circle is in sync. And so I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
I love it. I can't wait to talk, to talk about how we're doing these things. This is awesome. And this is like a sisterhood to me. So I really love the comfort level, and you invited me over to just chat about our story.
So let's talk about your story. And I know there's a lot to talk about, and I keep these shows pretty short, so we'll have to have you back one day too. So when you were talking about your story, like I said, the No Mean Girl movement, I was like, yes, girl, yes, because I am all about empowering women. I think men have done a great job in a lot of roles, but they can definitely do it better when there's a woman in the seat. They've had their time, and it's our turn. And so I also think, a lot of women before us worked really, really hard. We know what we had to go through, and so we know and can imagine what the women before us had to go through to get to any position of success and power. And so I think it would be an injustice for us to just sit back and not completely rip the doors off the hinges that they cracked open for us. And I love that you're doing that, and I love that you're teaching the next generation to do that as well. So tell us more about your mission and Hey Chica and just what you have going on.
Yeah, I love your reference to that too, because it is about tearing doors down. Like, I think that we are at a point with Hey Chica that started with, hey, I want to put my girlfriend in the conversation just like you did with me. So it's the same sort of mantra that I started Hey Chica with, is just, I want to start putting women in the game. It's not fun when you're the only one in the room. It's not fun when you're the only one at the party and you don't see a girlfriend that looks like you, or someone that you can kind of say, hey, this is really happening. Someone just to witness and to see the success of what you've built. Mm-hmm. And Hey Chica started with that. It was just me going and having an opportunity to really engage with powerful people in the city. And I just knew there was something missing. And it was a sisterhood of women that were with me to be able to take the picture, to say, hey, we were here once, kind of stamp our name in. But also the pouring in, and the sort of the way that I was raised was like, it's a community, and the community helps everyone. And it's about going to the lady who does this and to the girl who does this. And it was always instilled in me through my grandparents who were entrepreneurs. But for me, I was tired of being talked about, or how I walked into a room and a girl would look at you up and down and not say hi. And I was tired of that. And there's a lot of that, especially when you live in a city like Dallas or North Texas, because it's very lavish. Everyone knows Big D, right? Mm-hmm. It's glamorous, and it's very, the wealthy, and, it's you kind of have to fit in. My family from Austin visits, and they're like, oh my God, I have to get dressed up to go to your house. And I'm like, no, you don't. But it's just the energy that Dallas sort of has, and that's what people
Yeah.
love too. And I wanted to kind of bring it down to an approachable place, and where it's okay for you to be who you are and still walk into a room and feel glamorous, right? Feeling authentic, feeling that you have a safe space and that someone sees you. And that was how the mission for Hey Chica was started. And the No Mean Girl movement came later on, because I started to, when I was, Hey Chica, the summits were being held, we were really talking about being true to a sisterhood. And it wasn't just a sorority sisterhood or a Girl Scout sisterhood. It was something that was activated. And I think it resonated because women are now at that point where they're tired of it. They're tired of other women hating on them. They're tired of walking into a room and having someone look at them up and down without a greeting. And a lot of that stuff just happens over time when we go through phases of our leadership or our career, or when you have kids, and there's different cycles of life. And I think Hey Chica speaks to those, and that's why women are so attracted to it, because of the authenticity of it.
Yeah. I've been in executive roles and in, just business roles where I was the only woman, and I would be at a table or in a meeting, and, all these men in the same color blue shirts.
Yes.
And I would look around and they would literally say to me, like, I should feel lucky that I'm there. And I'm like, I don't feel lucky because I'm the only one. Like, this has to change. Why am I the only one here? And I think a lot of times what we've seen, and hopefully this is changing, these younger generations and us make me so proud. I just love everything they're doing. But, in my career, there were a lot of women who they felt like they had to hate on you to get closer to the men, to get up that level, or they were all gossiping together, and if you didn't want to be a part of that group, then you were shunned. And so I found myself in that category a lot, because I had no interest in ever tearing down another woman, but if you weren't part of that group, then you were better than them, or you were judged for that. And I think that's part of the reason why your story really settles with me very well, because I love women. I love people. I want everybody to succeed. But I'm also very intentional with the energy I have around me. And so, me wanting the best for everybody doesn't mean that I'm going to take less. And I think that's a good lesson that you put out there as well, is that we can all have everything we want and need without taking it away from each other.
Right. Absolutely. I learned that afterwards when we implemented self-care, even with Hey Chica, because I started to see that the things I didn't like in other women were the things I didn't like about myself. So when you start to do that internal work with yourself, like you become very open to other energetic circles, and you no longer hang around the people that probably weren't your friends anyway, that you're like, you kind of outgrow, still love them. But I think that's where we are as women. I think we're going back and healing ourselves and finding ourselves, and then that's showing up in the boardroom, in the conversation. And again, the young people who are really going and saying, you know what, this is not me, this is not who I am. And they're really peeling back the layers of things that we've sort of hid behind. And that's so important, because now I can walk into a boardroom and feel confident with who I am. It doesn't take anything away from anyone else, regardless of it's a man or woman. Because I think that that's also another important takeaway that I hope that the listeners know, is like, it's not men against women. It's not the empowered group, and that's not the way to go into it. Although we do have a louder mic, and we have an opportunity and a platform now, we still have to interact in our role in the community, in society, in a corporate boardroom, and that's so important. And we have to start to think in that way, but be smarter about it, and then get the resources that we need so we can excel at it and master that journey, if that's the one we're taking in whatever place we're in.
Yeah. I've always thought there's just so much education and diversity. If you stay around people that are just like you, what are you ever going to learn? So, I say that a lot. We do promote that we are a woman-owned company, right? So they're only less than 8% of CEOs in aviation are women. Less than 6% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies are women. That's a big part of our mission at Stella Jets, is to empower women and let them see themselves in these roles. Even as pilots, when you say pilot, the instant picture in your head is a gray-haired white man, right? And so just putting a new face on it. But that absolutely does not mean that we don't, love and appreciate and learn learn from men that are in these positions, have been in these positions. I have a ton of mentors that are retired pilots, and every one of them is a man. Not every one of them. We have several females, but it feels like it sometimes. And that's such a good point, because you have to learn from diversity. You have to learn from people that are different than you if you really want to grow. If you are not open to learning from people from different cultures and different religions and all of that stuff, then you're going to grow a lot slower, right?
Right. Or you're going to grow into fear, or you're going to grow into hate. There's so many things that attach to that. And I'll just use this example that's so important. I have, a 7 and a 9-year-old at home, and my 9-year-old's like, my master chef 9-year-old's like, Mom, I think I'm just a tomboy. And I thought, no, you're not. That word was used because I was so traumatized by it, because I like playing football and I like playing baseball. So they put me into the boy category.
Right.
And I'm like, no, girls do that too. So I'm reframing that and telling her, no, that's not a tomboy. Girls do that too.
Yeah.
But it takes work, right? And it takes for me to understand that in myself, to accept that I'm not a tomboy. That's not a boy thing. That's just sports girls who play sports or whatever, or like to dress a certain way. And I think that's where we're at now. It's like we're always having to educate and to be open to it in order for us to set up our next girl for success.
Absolutely.
And that's hard, right? Because we got to do the work.
Yeah.
Because our beliefs and our past is still there, telling us to say this, do this.
Right.
But the magic is when you're detaching from those things that you thought were true.
Right.
And then changing the narrative and then pouring in. That's powerful to me.
Yeah. And I think just like all the categories, right? Like this is for girls and this is for boys, that were lined up and they were taught to us and ingrained in us. Really what it did is taught us to judge ourselves.
Yeah.
Really harshly, on both sides, boys and girls. And so, I think it's really empowering that it's like, you are just you. You don't have to be you as a girl category, you as a boy category. Just love yourself, accept yourself, and give yourself the freedom, especially at your girl's ages, to develop into the best you can be, and not try and judge yourself every step of the way.
Absolutely. And the grace that comes with that, right? Because I might not be this person in 5 years. I might run into something else. Trauma may happen to me, as everyone has trauma that exposes them. Yeah. And I might be someone else. And I have to be okay with that growth, because it is growth. If we're tearing skin every day, we're tearing, beliefs, and we're just kind of exposed to a lot. But how do we get to that higher self? And it's just the opportunity in an open mind. Beginner's mind, I use that in my yoga sphere, right? The beginner's mind, and saying, I'm going to walk in this with the beginner's mind, with no attachments and no fear, and just let it do what it does.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's beautiful too. So let's talk about growth and your story, because you're kind of like me. We probably lived a dozen lifetimes in a very short period. I don't know about you, but I know that I didn't see my own potential as a youth, for sure. And I remember I went to my grandmother's birthday party, and this grandmother and I weren't very close. She's not the one I was the closest to, but she hadn't seen me in a long time. She knew me as struggling teen mom, right? And she didn't even recognize me. And my daughter was standing behind her when she asked my aunt. She said, "Now, who is that over there?" And my aunt said, that, and told her who I was. And she said, "Well, who would have thought?"
I think that every day when I look in the mirror, like, who would have thought I would be here,
And I mean, like I said, I wasn't super close to her, but I will never forget that moment, because I feel like that all the time. Like, so many things happen as a youth, and, as a child, and then as a teen mom, which I think we both have in common, that, I've never been overestimated. That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
And I've definitely never overestimated myself either. And that's exciting, because as much pride as I have in who I am and what I've accomplished, and who I've, mentored and all of that kind of stuff, it also leaves me excited, because I know how fast and how much more I can do. And I would really love for you to share kind of your story, because none of us started where we are, right? And some of us started on different paths and different levels, and we're just, able to grow into these who are our authentic self, despite of ourselves. So I would love if you'd share more of your story.
Yeah, I love that. And because no one expects it, right? They look at me and they're like, oh, what? That happened to you? It's the cat with 9 lives, right? You just, I was pregnant at 14. My dad was in the Mexican mafia. My dad was in a drug gang, like in Austin. So I was just raised in the streets and then would live half time with my grandparents who were very Mexican, like cultured. And so I was just kind of trying to find who I was at the time and felt validated in a place where, I didn't know any better. And I got pregnant when I was 14, had my kid when I was 15, right when I was going into my freshman year in high school. Unfortunately, that wasn't uncommon. There was like 3 or 4 other girls that were pregnant in junior high because I went to a predominantly Hispanic and Black high school. So that was not uncommon, although my grandparents had better expectations for us. Yeah. And my mom was a young mom, so it was a generational thing. But during that time, I didn't feel I was a victim to it. I think I've always had the spirit of optimism. And I knew that watch me do it. I was like, I'm going to do it. And it is what I'm going to just make my life the way it is and survive. And I think it was always a survivor's mentality because I was coming from poverty. My parents were evicted. I went to 13 elementary schools. I share that, how we'd come home and there was all our clothes outside. And so the resilience of the bounce back was always something, unfortunately, that I was used to. I wasn't not exposed to it. So the fear of that never happened. I think I didn't have fear until I faced my grandparents. And this is where the shame comes in when we were raised Catholic. And it was like, you're going to get married. This is a shame thing, So I married my high school sweetheart, my first, child's dad. And it was through the Catholic Church. And I had to do all the things that my grandparents believed religiously in the community. We didn't want the community to put our name in the bat, So many things that come with that. When you go back and look at it, you're like, who gives a crap, at this point? Yeah. But I was honoring those traditions and the rituals that I still honor to this day and I respect. Mm-hmm. But it was hard. My grandmother tried to choke me when she found out what is going on. And my dad and my mom were just still trying to figure it all out themselves. And I went to college and I graduated high school. I was the first to graduate high school in my family, the first to go to college. And still none of my family has gone to college. So I was still out there trying to prove that I'm still the good daughter. I'm still the good person. You still raised me well. Mm-hmm. And despite my father and my mom's indiscretions, they still had this beautiful person that they raised. So I was always trying to show up for the community, the family. But the struggle was real. Like getting married at 18, it was hard. Going to college with a brand new baby and all I had was my car, and I drove to South Carolina from Texas. My dad was upset, tried to kill himself when I left. They couldn't believe I was abandoning the family and going to college the night before. Wow. So before I even got in my car with my kid and my husband at the time and driving to South Carolina from Austin with nowhere to go, we stayed in a hotel. So those it sounds fake. It's like these are real stories of how the struggle takes place, but the resiliency at the end is greater than, the struggle. And so that was my life. And I went to school, graduated, and my daughter went to college and high school with me, and she's 31 now. But I go back and I look at that. I'm like, how did I do that? Because I talk to my husband now, and he's like, I wasn't even thinking about that. In college, having a kid and having to work 2 jobs and wait tables and pay daycare and then study. And I just think that you kind of know that there's a bigger mission in your heart, that there's a purpose, and you just kind of explore that journey. I mean, it's hard. I can't imagine. I know people, single moms now, I'm like, how do you do it?
I know.
And I have more resources now, but I'm still like, wow. Yeah. That we really can do a lot more than we think. And it takes a strong heart and a mind to navigate that in a really, really strong focus and self-awareness, and then aligning yourself in the right places. So it's discouraging to hear that there's a lot of people that are struggling through that same thing. And I try to do a lot. Actually, my goal for the future of Hey Chica is to have a teen mom sort of leadership something, because I did have a teacher that ran our teen mom program that we had to ship to. You know how you ship the bad kids to a different school or whatever. So I had to go in, do a certain amount of hours in that, and they would pay my daycare if I could do that. And I reached out to her recently. I'm like, are you still doing teen stuff? She's like, yeah. I'm like, I want to help. Like, how can I get involved? Because I think now a lot of moms, teen moms, they get sort of the book on how to get on WIC and food stamps. They don't get the book on how to get out of this and become a businesswoman, a corporate lady. So I think there's an opportunity, and maybe that's for me and you too, that we can explore. Because you're not discounted. There's no scarlet letter on something that happened to you, and you don't have to be a victim, right? You can be, the victor and still succeed and get out of this situation, or become where you can raise your child and feel confident and loved and successful.
I think part of what helps us when we're young is that we have all that arrogance and that invincibility. Because now I'm the same way. I look back and think, oh my goodness, like how I ended up having 5 children, but my first 3 I had by the time I was 17.
See?
And by the time I was 18, I could finally sign the papers to get a divorce, and my husband was on drugs and just not, it's a long story. We
Similar
don't have time
story.
for
You and
today.
I, I'm like, girl, this is the same story.
Everybody was like, what are you going to do? You can't do it. I'm like, I'm not going to be a welfare mom. Like, I will take help for right now.
Yeah.
But I know who I am, and I know who I'm going to be. And I love that I had the arrogance and the confidence at that age to say, no, I'm better than this. And, a lot of times you get people that they give you advice out of the goodness of their heart, like your family did, right? And they give you advice and they mean well, but they've never done what you're doing. They can't really tell you how to do this. So a lot of times, they're giving us advice from their heart, and they mean very well, but they're giving you advice on something they've never done before, right? And so all those generational curses, they're putting on you unknowingly, usually, right? Because they really believe it's what's best for you. And so for me, I was just like, I'm not going to be a welfare mom. I'm going to be successful any way I can. And my family was like, you can't divorce him. You can't do it by yourself. You just turned 18. You have 3 kids, like, so on and so forth. And I was like, watch me. I'm like, first of all, I'm not by myself. I always have God with me.
Yeah.
Who else do I need? And I look back now and I think, oh, you arrogant little shit. Like, I'm so proud of you, that you were, because now I would be like, oh my God, what am I, I just, and I have grandkids now, and I'm like, can they come over one at a time?
That's how I am. I have grandkids too. Yeah. And I'm like, my daughter is a single mom right. No, she's not, but she was before. And I'm like, how do you do that? Yeah. I can't. My mind is not set up for that anymore. Like, I cannot go through that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a different party, and you're like, oh.
I think if I would have waited later in my life, I would have maybe had 1 kid.
Right.
Or
none.
And yeah, my youngest child, who you've met here, Jasmine, she's the VP of Stella Jets. She's the best gift I've ever received, and every one of my kids will hear this and not be surprised, because she's just an old soul. She's brilliant. She's I just can't imagine her never coming into my life. So it's kind of when you get to an older stage in your life, you look back at the staircase and you see every trip and every fall and every giant step and every pulled muscle of your whole life that led you to this amazing place, and it's just all worth it. And so I wish as a youth that we could see, you can't see the top of the staircase, but when you get to where we are, you can definitely see the bottom.
Oh yeah.
And that's a lesson I would have loved to have learned a little bit sooner, that just because I can't see more than 1 step ahead of me doesn't mean that staircase isn't going incredibly high. And, I just hope that the youth now, I love that we have a community online as well, and that young girls, if they don't have people in their life who have overcome stories like yours, to inspire them, that they can go online and they can find that. And I love that you're out there and you're putting out your story and you're encouraging these women. And yes, absolutely. I always have wanted to do something with teen moms, because we're survivors. We are survivors of being single teen moms. For me, a teen mom for you. And I think it's really important that we, encourage young girls to not think that this is the end, and help them see that there's more steps up that staircase.
Absolutely. And I really believe that nothing goes wasted, right? For me, like I lost a child, my second half of my life, I had kids again, and I had twins, and lost my son totally unexpectedly. So I thought, oh my God, as a teen mom, forget that you have a baby. Like, childbirth and hormone, like start to take away just you're a teen mom, okay, but think about the mental things that happen just to any woman who gives birth to a child,
right.
and then grief and all these things. I'm like, there's so many layers that we just don't talk about outside of the stigma, right, of being a young mom in that way.
Yeah.
Or then being an older mom now, almost 40, having a kid again. It was like, what? And then losing a kid. It's like, there's so many things that are going to happen. That's what I say. No one is, free from pain or trauma. It's going to happen to us in so many different stages of our life. Mm-hmm. But you're right. The understanding that it's part of the purpose and the rite of passage is what I like to reference that to, is a little different, and the acceptance is different, and then the bounce back is different, right? Because we know it doesn't kill us. Right. Well, we get really close, but it doesn't kill us, But empowering ourselves in that way to know, wow, I see myself. I see this happening. I'm taking a breath. I know it's meaningful. Mm-hmm. I know it's going to change me. I know there's a story and a reason for it.
Yeah.
Gives
and
you
that's hard, especially I also buried a son, a stillborn. And, people would say, well, everything happens for a reason. I was like, screw you. Don't say that to me right now. But he was going to be my last child, and I never would have had my daughter that I was just bragging about. So at the time, you don't always see, and it's really hard to understand, but there's things that we never get over, but we get through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's everything else too. Losing a family member, a parent. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? And
cancer.
Just everything. And I just have a little more empathy for that, because my girl is a twin. So I get to see my daughter who, if they were twin, I'm just like, you want to go back and say, oh, they would have been that age together. This would have been happening. Yeah. But the perspective of, no, they came for their purpose, and then also having empathy for someone who has lost a loved one has changed for me too, right?
For sure.
Like, oh, it's okay. It's, there's a reason, or, hey, at least you have her. And I'm like, no, there's no at least, there's none of that. But still learning as humanity that we have a lot of growing to do when we're experiencing life like that for someone else, and then holding space for ourselves in that same way.
Love it. So before we wrap up, if you were just talking directly to, some 20-year-olds out there that are trying to figure out, and I think what I hear the most in that generation is, I have no idea what I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, just figure out what you want to do this year, this month. You don't have to figure out the rest of your life. But I would love for you to just tell us what would be the one or two strongest tips or things of some advice for these women and young women who are trying to figure out how to be their highest achieving, most authentic self.
I love that. And my biggest gift to that conversation would be go back, just like you and I spoke of, and write down your timeline. Even if you're 18, the timeline is going to always tell you the direction you're going.
Thanks for coming. I think you've given so many good tips and lessons, and we'll do a lot of talking in the future. We'll have to have you back. The more we can empower and encourage people, I think the higher everyone's frequency goes. So tell everyone how to find you.
Yes. So my personal Instagram is Healthy Latina Lifestyle. I love everything lifestyle that relates to health and wellness. Hey Chica Movement is our arm for our nonprofit. But you can find most of everything there with Veronica Torres Hazley. If you find me on LinkedIn or Facebook, there as well.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again for coming, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Fight to Fly. And don't forget to subscribe for even more motivational content and lessons from high achievers. We love to hear your feedback, so be sure to comment and rank us below and tell us what you got out of today's show, be it a laugh or a lesson. And catch us next week on the Fight to Fly show.